This is Vincent Spruit, and welcome to our podcast, Data and AI Talks. Today, we are going to talk about dedicated symbiosis, or with less fancy words, the collaboration between humans and AI. I invited Dr. Marc Jacobs, data scientist, absolute fan of numbers, and since recently also a writer. You wrote a book from earthquake to zoonosis. You need to explain that to me in a little bit, which provides insights into how you can use mathematic models to make policy on, for example, crises such as earthquakes and corona.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. So thank you, Vincent. Yeah. Yes, my first book. I co-wrote it with Professor Ronald Meester, who I think
Yeah.
is now in his 10th book. He's a complete machine when it comes to writing. Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because people always talk about okay, from earthquake to zoonosis, or in Dutch, van aardbeving tot zoonosis. What does it actually mean as zoonosis? And that keeps surprising me because in the Corona period, zoonosis was early on explained as the transfer from a virus from an animal to a human and vice
Ah,
versa. So that's what you now also talk about with the bird flu. So the bird flu, the monkeypox, and of course the coronavirus.
the bat.
Or yeah, so with the bat, those are the examples. At least they're described as examples of zoonosis, and we felt that that would be an exotic name. And then of course the book also goes from A to Z, and it has the link with coronavirus. But we keep getting quite some questions about what it actually means. Yeah.
Yes, okay, yeah, because in Dutch it's aardbeving, then it's A to Z. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
and it's understanding. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
and then everything in between.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be a talk now about the collaboration between humans and
Yeah.
AI. And
Yeah.
what is your vision for the future on that
Oof.
topic?
Wow. That's
Let's just dive in. Let's just dive
yeah,
in.
exactly. Yeah, so what's my vision for the future? The funny thing is that I, especially if you look at where AI is now and where it's going, I dare not to make a very big vision, but what I do see is incremental steps and sometimes quite some big steps. We now have Chat GPT, which every blog post, news article is about. But it's really a catalyst for a further AI hype and also to make it more understandable. I see the future as in which AI is almost as trusted as most people would trust a calculator and would trust a navigation within their car or the assist functions within the car. So if we look at the calculator, I mean, if I do math on a calculator, I trust the numbers. I don't think anybody will actually still look
Yeah.
if the calculator is correct. And when it comes to navigation, I mean, of course, the navigation sometimes makes errors, but for the majority of the people, they will just use it. And what I think that the future will hold, and there's still a lot of challenges there, is that they will trust the advice from an AI system
Yeah.
to do their own job faster, better, and also have creative and brain power left for the other parts in which AI is, less suited for, at least now. So I think that's where I think the future will go. I don't dare to make any kind of projection on time because you see as certain things like ChatGPT is a clear event where people now have a much broader understanding of what AI can do and much broader
Hmm.
discussion about what humans are. But I would say that is where it's going to go. So I foresee a symbiosis in which we trust AI and then also hopefully start to take on another role, which is almost to what a parent to a child is in which we actively help AI to help us.
So in this case, the AI would be the child.
Yeah, so in this case, the AI will be the child. And of course, it's not that we raise children to help us. Of course, although in certain cultures, you see this cycle. But what I do often see in my own job is that AI is trained within proof of concepts And then the proof of concept is put into the real world. So we go from the lab to the real world, and then it fails. And of course it fails because it's not going to see situations which is never seen before. And people say, okay, look, this is not going to work. We're not going to make any money out of it. AI is not ready yet. And I'm like, okay, but that is the same as, bringing a child or bringing anybody, a new colleague, into a environment they've never been in. They see it fails, and I say, you cannot do this. You help that person, you support that person.
Yeah.
With AI, we're going to see the same things, and I hope that also with ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT, we now see that, of course, it doesn't always give the right answer, and it has its flaws, but it's also the nature of the system to keeps correcting itself and to keeps learning from the input it's getting.
Yeah.
Which I think is the way to go, instead of saying, okay, this is an AI system that is racist or discriminatory, and so we must kill it. I mean, there must be a teacher-instructor relationship, which also works the other way around. So just like a navigation system is going to tell us this is the best route to take, or we see traffic up ahead, you can divert here and here.
Mm-hmm.
AI can also train us and help us.
So on that part, so you say AI might become like a calculator, how we trust the calculator, or navigation. I think the calculator is just with numbers, so that will be it's either right or not right, and I think there's little room to go wrong there.
Yeah.
Unless the calculator is broken, maybe.
Yeah.
With navigation, you do see that there's a lot of different routes, or sometimes the actual route. You think, this is not the best way. But also, wouldn't it be wrong to just trust the AI to do like for example with a calculator, just to trust them to give the right answers and not to think about it anymore?
Yeah, so this is then where I need to come back to the book that I wrote with Ronald Meester. Is we've seen those examples. So for instance, and there's also a lot of examples that we haven't seen yet. So there is a lot of automation going on. There's a lot of automated systems. If you're on the internet, there's a lot of processes going on, tracking what you do, advertisement. There's a lot going on. But if we look at systems, AI that's used for policy, so really broad policy, like the toeslagenaffaire. So I mean, this is where policy really can go wrong if we leave it unchecked. And the thing is that we didn't really left it unchecked. I mean, there was a machine learning model, but it was retrained every year, and the interaction between humans and machine wasn't that clear. So government tried to implement a AI system to help them, which I really think was it started with the right reasons, but it evolved way too fast, and it went to a point where they probably didn't even understand what it was doing, and they couldn't go back because they already had it in production.
So for the people who don't know, the toeslagenaffaire, that's where people who have children get money from the government, or supposed to be getting it based on their income, but the AI tool was making wrong conclusions and didn't give money to people who should have gotten it, and even they went into debts, and it was something that happened over years, and people really got into trouble with terrible consequences in Netherlands.
Yeah, so this is where I think that the symbiosis, in that sense, it didn't work. And you could say, hey, that's learning, that's learning material, but it also ruined people's lives. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't use AI to inform us, but I still have quite some restraints when it comes to using full-fledged AI systems unchecked. For wider policies. So if you look, for instance, at weather predictions, so weather predictions are not automated. I mean, they're automated to the extent that they come to the expert. So the experts, the meteorologists, they get their predictions, and then they start looking at those predictions, and they make manual adjustments, and then that's what goes to the news, etc. So that's how it works. So that's also symbiotic.
They take a lot of legwork out of it, and they make it easier to make these predictions, or actually they make predictions, but as an expert you would know, hey, this is wrong.
Of course. So I don't think that there's a lot of companies that would actually allow AI systems to automatically buy raw materials for products without a human looking into it, interfering into it, because The thing with AI systems is that they are so fast, exponentially fast. They can do so many of the rudimentary work that we do at such a large scale that a very tiny, very small error, a tiny error,
Yeah.
can exponentially
Can
explode.
bankrupt your company. Yeah.
Of
It can
course,
it can spend all the money just on
of course. That,
in
that
one
doesn't mean,
minute.
by the way, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to see if there are human processes that we perhaps could replace. Like
Yeah.
what's also happening with robots, it's happening all. But you see that always creates room for new stuff. And I think if you look at the pyramid of Maslow, where you have these 5 layers, where they say safety, food, love, and even still in today, there's not that many countries where there's really room to work on your self-image, self-esteem, self-enlightenment. But
Yeah.
I do think that AI can help us to have some of these fundamental things being taken care of for us. So that's where automation should go. So so that also means we could develop ourselves, and that's what you now see with ChatGPT, is where we now start asking ourselves questions: what is creativity?
Yeah.
What is
What is
language
art?
to us? Exactly. What's art? What does it mean to be human? What's consciousness? And to me, that's the beauty of that development.
So now a question that you raised before in one of our earlier talks is what does AI make for being human? What does it mean now to be human?
To be honest, that's a question I think that's being asked almost from existence. I mean, for thousands of years. I don't know. I don't know what it means to be human. I mean, there's definitely philosophers who have a take on that. But what I do feel is that what's happening now, and that's what I find fascinating, is that it's believed that AI, or an algorithm, which is just a network of probability calculations, can be racist, which
Yeah.
is a value. It's a value, and it's a norm, that it can tell a lie, that it can manipulate, that it can show sarcasm. And that's, I think, where ChatGPT is such a nice example, is because the power of ChatGPT, what a shitty name. The power of it is not just the amount of knowledge that it has. The power is in the fluent way
Yeah.
that it writes. And because it's so fluent, we trust it and we interact with it. If there were errors in it, we would say, oh, it's an AI system. But now we have the illusion
Yeah.
of somebody else writing that. And we're so used to chatting with somebody we've never seen that whole layer of what it means to be a human is now almost in the digital sphere. And so we are like, hey, this is like a human. So ChatGPT is like a human because it writes and it talks so fluently, and you can interact with it, it will respond. I mean, okay. But does that mean that it's human? Just because it can use language? And
And that's a
some,
very interesting thing you're saying there. And I had in my last podcast was
yeah,
with Peter van der Putten. He gave me a question to ask you, and specifically on this topic. He said, what would be the most interesting human quality to study through the AI lens beyond intelligence? Are there qualities, for example, that are completely off limits? And he's doing this in his university in Leiden with his students, saying that training AI in a certain emotion or in a certain quality of human
empathy.
empathy.
I would say empathy. So I mean, if you look at the physiological basis of empathy, then it's, at least that's where biology stands now. It's our neurons being able to reflect on what they see. So these reflection neurons, it's empathy. I have 2 kids, a son who's 5 years old and a daughter who's 2 years old. And social skills they learn already early on. So language and social skills, besides from learning cause and effect and correlation, they go very fast. So empathy goes very fast. And of course, later on comes planning, etc. But these are the things that AI is actually quite equipped for. But empathy, I would say that I sometimes wonder, what if we would build a robot or a human-like synthetic body, and we would give it a speech module, and we would put Chat GPT in that one, or even
Yeah.
better. So the next one. And would that constitute a human? And I don't know, because human, and that's something else that I experienced the last 3 or 4 years, is that just scientific thinking and rationality, that doesn't define me as a human. I mean, we've seen it in the coronavirus when we all had to work from home.
Yeah.
I mean, a lack of physical contact, a lack of social contact, it can really hurt a person. And so I think what means to be human is also to generate a feeling of social togetherness and of inspiration. And I don't see that AI doing yet. But that then also brings me back to the question, is language the thing that binds us and puts us above other species? I don't know. But if to come back to the question, I think empathy, and then it's not just empathy on terms of speech, because they already trained chatbots on, responding empathetically. But it's to I
That's a
think
tone.
yeah, that's a tone, and that's the
Because we
right
like
reaction.
like how chat was trained is one with the data, of course, but two, it was also in a way that the answers it gave, they were shown to people and then said, which do you like the most? So at some point it knew it's not just there to give correct answers, it's
No.
also there to please us,
Yes.
that we like it, that
Yes.
there's a certain likability. So
Yes.
that's
And then, yes.
we're
Yes.
trying
And
to
then
make it more human.
Yeah.
By the way, there's a light
Yes.
in your back, so I see sometimes I see the sun from.
Yeah. Let me put my my bald head in front of it. No, it's and then of course and that's kind of funny, because if I think about that, then it's also okay. Is that a characteristic of the algorithm? So now we're talking about characteristics. That's something that's to humans.
What is it?
A characteristic, so character. So let's say
Okay.
you're we can say somebody's a nice
Characteristic.
person.
Okay, yeah.
Characteristic. So characteristic. And it's the same as saying, okay, this algorithm can lie, but this algorithm cannot tell the truth. But I don't think we are that far that we can actually place a value. So perhaps I first said empathy, but now thinking about it and talking with you about it, I perhaps the thing is that the creation of an algorithm that has personality, true personality, and has a true value base, that's perhaps the holy grail. Because that's also when it becomes dangerous. Because then you have a system that can say, I don't like you, and I can use that immense brain power that I have, that immense network
to destroy you.
To destroy you. Because that's what it is. I mean, in terms of raw calculative power, it's well beyond us.
Yeah.
But its scope is a minuscule fraction of what humans can do. I mean, let there be no doubt about it. It's not even on par on what humans can do. And of course, we also have there's also humans who possess these immense abilities to remember everything that they see, to do calculations in our minds. There's a lot that we don't understand about ourselves. But what we also wrote in the book is that AI at this moment, and perhaps never, cannot do any kind of value judgment. So there was an AI system that was placed in the government to say, okay, who is going to get an allowance at a toeslagen or who's not? And when it said not, it didn't matter to the algorithm if somebody would be unfairly treated.
Yeah.
It doesn't think that, like, it doesn't feel.
It's black and white.
It just follows the rules. It's been given a task and it just follows the rules.
But that's inhuman.
Well, humans can also do the same. In that sense, you have soldiers who also follow the rules and follows orders. But it's.
But our heroes are the ones who know when not to follow the orders.
Well, I would say that being human. I mean, there's a lot of this in developmental psychology. And it also goes with kids. They learn the rules. So we teach them the rules, and then at a certain moment they learn, okay, there's the law. And then, of course, the highest order is to say, okay, when not to follow the rules, because you know or just feel that things are not correct.
That's values.
I would say that's values. That's norms and values. And an algorithm doesn't have that. And sure, I mean, you could train it with values. You could train it to, but then if we do that, then we would assume that a value can be reduced into a network of probabilities again. So then we come into this extreme reductionism of everything that is around us. So everything is breakable into mathematical calculations and molecules.
Yeah.
And I would say that, and perhaps that's a little bit the romantic side of me, is that, but also the mathematical side of me, is that that's just never possible. There is a part of us I don't think that we can ever place into an algorithm, but that doesn't mean
But
that
also humans are imperfect, and
yeah,
we lie. And even if your wife asks, how am I looking today? You think, no.
yeah,
or how are you feeling?
yeah,
And you say, good, even though you're
yeah,
not good.
yeah,
Like sometimes it's also just pleasant to make
yeah,
a white
yeah,
lie. And
yeah,
if you know the difference between that, then you have better relationships with
yeah,
people,
yeah,
and that there's so much more to us. But the difference between an AI and a human is that an AI can have so much more impact on the world. At the same, a human can only influence little things,
yeah.
and an AI can influence the whole world at the same second.
And
If they
that's
make the mistake, it's much bigger.
and that's why we don't. And that's the funny thing is we're looking for humanity within AI, and if we find it, we reject it.
Yeah.
We will never. I don't think we will ever accept full humanity in AI because of that reason. Because AI is so scalable by itself that if there is anything that would threaten us or harm us or would not be pleasant to us, we would not accept it. We don't accept an AI system that is racist. Of course, we don't accept humans that are racist, but we don't accept an AI system that lies. We don't even accept it when it's not right in the answer it's given. Because that's the first thing that people did, is to say, okay, how many times is ChatGPT actually correct? And it turns out there's numerous instances where it's not correct. And we say, look at this, it's dangerous.
Yeah. And then there's the humans that all have different values. Like,
of course,
and even within one country, as I was looking at the crown, the Siri, and you see the queen needs to be there for everybody, and that means that she shouldn't have an opinion about anything, otherwise she offends people.
Yeah.
But you cannot ever please everybody.
No.
And that's the same thing, and that's in one country, but even in one family or in one friend group.
Yeah.
So maybe you shouldn't have AIs that want to please everybody. Maybe you should have different AIs that please a certain amount of people for a certain goal. And if you saw the movie Her, I think you probably did. That raises a whole other question. Like, he falls in love with an AI. It's not even a body. It's just a voice.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, I'm in a relationship with her. And then he says, is that crazy? So then they start to figure out, what is a relationship, or does it make you feel happy? And it's the same questions that we're trying to answer right now. Like, can you have a relationship with an AI?
Yeah, and so this is where I feel, because I'm a psychologist by training, and so this is where I'm also doing a 180 turnaround back to my original studies. Is that this is fascinating, Vincent, because we're now within audio-visual, text to speech, text to image, image to text. We are now so advanced to the point where we can say, okay, we can have a relationship with somebody who is not real, because you can have back in the day, you could fall in love with somebody you would just write a letter to, the correspondence, or you would just talk to. You would never meet that person. You would just see it on a picture once. And now at this point, we're even that far that so just the personal information. So my brother deceased when he was very young. It's almost 30 years ago, and we don't have any audio clips of him anymore. But if I would have audio clips of him, and at a certain moment, I could train an AI to speak in his voice.
Yeah.
And with enough information, I could make him almost alive.
Yeah.
In the digital sphere. And I'm pretty sure there will be a business very soon where people can do this, where people can say, okay, just give us enough information and we'll make sure that somebody never dies.
Yeah.
Like, so somebody's never away if the picture goes away or you go to the cemetery. No, we actually have.
But that's another question. Like, should we want that? Because it's a part of life to also have loss. And if somebody really never goes away, like you don't. What does that mean? Also, to be human.
Yeah. And so that makes us, and so
because
that's
I think
also,
ChatGPT already did that, right? You can. There's enough data, for example, about presidents or famous people right now. You can have a conversation with them.
Yes. Yes.
Like the AI, if you would respond like
Yes.
Morgan Freeman, how would that sound? Or if you would respond like
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci, or
Yeah. 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 So what you're getting is then fundamental discussions about what it means to be human. And I think that after 10 years of constant hyping in terms of modeling, AI, descriptive, predictive, prescriptive, I think we're now going to turn into a new era where it's not just focusing on models, and data, but it's also focusing back on us, which I think is a good thing. And that's also what's necessary also to reach that level of dedicated symbiosis, because it means also to look back into what it means to be human, but it also means that we have to let our sometimes xenophobic tendencies, to mistrust everything that's not human or not us, to let that go. Because now AI is at a certain point where it's actually reaching us, it's touching us. And I don't think it has values. I think it can almost think or make us believe that it has values, but underneath, I still reject the idea that we humans are nothing more than a network of probabilities and calculations, but perhaps I'm proving wrong in the near future. But I do see a lot of room for going beyond the calculator and
yeah,
going beyond the navigation system by reason of accepting the flaws within the next generation of AI. Because that's also the thing, is that the more advanced they become, the more flaws they will also show,
yeah.
which is the next step to having values and norms and being more
Well,
human.
it's interesting what you trigger me with this. I had another podcast with Wijnand Kersten, and he said he's collecting all of his own data. So from phone calls to
Yeah,
videos to
yeah,
everything. So there's so much data, and he says I only use a few platforms.
yeah,
I wanna already own it,
yeah,
because if I get that AI at some point, it will
yeah,
know me better and it will assist me better. But you could also make the case for that you make an AI who is like you, who
yeah,
can act like you, who can
yeah,
talk like you, with
yeah,
all of that. And maybe at some point there will be a consciousness in the AI. So would that be meaning that you basically are living digitally in a computer? Maybe that consciousness thinks that it's you because it has all the memories of you. Who doesn't say that you are not that
yeah,
AI in the computer?
yeah,
So you
yeah,
said about your brother, but I think what we
yeah,
will see is first about people that are making clones of themselves because they can feed the data much better because they have all the data of themselves, and they if there's something missing, they can tell them about it, or they can have conversations about it and teach.
yeah,
So, and that would mean that you will be able to live forever, or as a digital entity, or as you saw in her, that at some point the AI will get bored with the digital world as we are here, and they find some
yeah,
new place to go. But then you open up a whole new warm case of um, things that are maybe unethical edge, what we shouldn't explore, or
yeah.
maybe we should. And there should be rules.
Yeah, yeah. So these are extremely fascinating topics to talk about, and it's always in the case of AI, it's necessary. So on the one hand, it's necessary to keep talking about these, and to keep talking about the future, and to look into the greater unknown. On the other hand, only a handful of companies are at this moment really able to make money out of AI, to implement AI, to build pipelines, to deploy some of the perhaps most simplest of algorithms. So we
Hmm.
always have those two sides of the spectrum. Is one is the moon, and now
Yeah,
you're talking about things that's just a parallel universe,
yeah,
and just getting your house in order.
yeah,
And so I think that now with ChatGPT, I think that most people finally they can interact with AI, and they start to get a feeling of what that means. And so
yeah,
now you're able not just to see the car in the showroom, you're able to drive it. So now
yeah,
you get a feeling of what it is to drive. And that doesn't mean that now everybody can implement it and fully understand it, but at least so now we don't you probably we don't even talk about AI anymore. It's like AI, it's like ChatGPT. So now I know what you mean.
yeah,
So then everybody starts to think about, to have an idea of what it means, and that will help the rest of the world to also combine and to make this thing grow. Because on the one hand, we have these great things into the future, perhaps things that we will still see once we grow older, but my kids probably will. And on the other hand, I still see companies struggling to deploy models. So for instance, healthcare. Healthcare is a great example. 10 years ago, they said AI will replace all the radiologists and pathologists. I still believe 80% of the physicians doesn't even know what AI is. Or perhaps now they do, but they still don't see how that will work. And although the FDA has quite a lot of algorithms approved, there's still many failures in the real world, which means there's still a lot of iterations to be done.
And even if it would work, the trust of an AI would take years to.
Of course.
That you let your life depend on it.
And you have to change the law, which is another thing,
like a pilot. Would you step into a plane without a pilot?
Yeah, so that's
might be safer.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. I don't think I would. No, I wouldn't. Although I know that the majority of the flaws, if not all, are being done by human hands, and I do know that planes can lift off and land on their own for quite some time. But I don't, and that is something that I cannot explain. So I cannot, as a human, explain why I feel that way.
And so I think AI can do a lot for business processes for companies. That's where we definitely should use it. But now we also see it really on the front end, like customer service in marketing. You want it to be, and that's why we want to train it to be more human. And that's where the tricky part is. And maybe that's where the part is where we should say, hey, let's train it up to here and not no further, because then you copy people. And but yeah, I think that the big value for companies is not in that department. Maybe with mails, writing mails, it's pretty easy. You can program that, but the big value is in optimization of business processes and reading your data, getting more value out of it, and and I think that's where companies really should put their focus. And in my opinion, and maybe you agree with this, I do think that we all are going to get an AI assistant. Like a calculator, somebody. I think ChatGPT is already doing a good job at it. If you have a question, you just ask them. If you want something simple task to be done, you do it.
Yeah, I have the same. I always think about Jarvis from Iron Man.
Yeah.
So the movie Iron Man, you have Jarvis, who is the personal AI system. You see these AI systems in the Marvel movies are abundant. But I think we're going to go that way, and it can go very fast. On the other hand, I also see that companies are now realizing that they need more than just an Excel file. So there's a lot of requests, and you also know that for engineering capability, you have to make sure that the production processes and the technological processes are in order so they can fully support the human process in place. So when you talk about analytics and AI, I think the majority of the companies are now into dashboarding. So they make sure that everything is in order, so the technological process and the pipelines, they flow. And then they place dashboards on top of that. So now the interaction between analytics and data and humans, it's in dashboards. And I think that in a couple of years, we will finally make the step into analytics. So and that's then also in the sense of an advisor or in the sense of a personal assistant, in which you can ask. That doesn't mean, though, that we never have to do things manually. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do research. But it will mean that AI will help us to do triage much faster. I don't think
make better predictions.
Yes, make better prediction. But once again, that's symbiosis. So all of this is dedicated symbiosis. I don't think that it's like predicting the weather. I don't think that it's just going to be an AI system. I think it always needs to coincide, just like we humans also get better if we do things on a team level. If we work with a
computer, if we work with a mobile phone, or
if we work with a mobile, but also if we work with ourselves. So I mean, I always prefer. So if I look for teams and if I train teams in data science or data engineering, I'm always happy when those teams are very diverse from diverse backgrounds, because that means they have an open view. and it means that they need to come from different directions to the same thing. That always gives very creative solutions, totally out of the box. And AI will, at a certain moment, be, let's say, in a team of 12, will be the 13th player. And we will need to also help that 13th player to understand what we need and what's being expected of it. And so, in that sense, I don't think that it will be any different. So, we could even talk about HR onboarding for an AI system. So then we really help the AI to help us, like we onboard a colleague to also add something to the team and to change the mixture of the team.
Yeah. Well, I did start some posts on it, but there's a big how do you say that? There's some critics on that topic, on selecting humans, and if you should use AI there. And but I think
No, not just selecting humans, not just using AI to
for a
select
job.
humans. No, to have AI as a colleague. So let's say if we have a meeting of 12, you have an AI
Yeah.
system as a 13th to bring
Yeah, yeah.
input.
But you want them to actually be employees, like on the payroll.
Yes. Yeah. So not on the payroll, but yes. I mean,
Yeah.
and the funny thing, you could say being on the payroll because training an AI system is still expensive. It's still heavy, huh? It's
So every team should
so
have their own. You can give it a name and just talk to it, and
Siri,
train it.
Alexa, we do it. We do it all the time, and I
Yeah.
think that level of personalization, that will happen. I think that will happen. And then the funny thing is that a lot of the things coming from the movies out of the 70s and the 80s, not the Terminator stuff, but the stuff Hell and the rest, I don't think they were so far off.
But also
I'm not,
because we construct it in what we can imagine,
it's
and
in
we
the
imagine
end,
what we know.
in the end, it's a human product.
Everything
And
that's being created is was once in an idea, was once in our minds. Hey, I want to thank you for your thoughts, for your. It's always nice to talk a little bit of philosophy about AI and see where it's going. Hope we added some value here, and maybe we can start a discussion, and maybe there is room for a follow up on this one in a few months' time to see where are we now, because the world right now on AI is changing super quick.
yeah,
Like if you see the development with ChatGPT, everybody's talking about it. Everything's changing. So hey,
yeah.
I wanna thank you so much. If the people who follow this podcast want to see more, the name is Data and AI Talks, and you can follow it on YouTube or on Spotify. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your time, Mark.
All right, thank you. Bye bye, Vincent.